There we go. So welcome to tonight. You should be here for the WaterWise Garden Mentors program. This is our plant identification workshop. Tonight, joining me, we have Paul Erdman. He is our Natural Resources Program Manager. So he'll be doing the majority of the lift on this presentation, and excited to have folks here who are interested. And Paul's a great resource. So with that, Paul, I'll let you take it right away. Just a reminder for folks, this is recorded, and will be available for later use.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for having me. I am the Natural Resource Program Manager here at Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District, Paul Erdman. We manage about 100 acres of restoration around the district, Lake Phelan, Lake Owasso, several other sites. So hopefully you get out to those sites and take a look this summer. We're hard at work making them look great. Tonight's agenda, our outline is some tips for identifying plants. We're going to discuss plant growth cycles. We're going to go over just a few common weed species and kind of discuss their growing cycle. This is just a snapshot of just a few weeds that you'll encounter on sites that you might manage. We're going to have some closing tips and then leave a little time for questions. So first off, it's a good idea to have a good plan of your site. Maybe that's a rain garden, maybe that's a pollinator meadow, maybe it's some other kind of native planting. So there's the original planting plan, if you can start with that, and then add to it, and that's going to be your best friend to help identify the plants that you want to have and be able to figure out what's a weed and what isn't, and to go from there. So you can create a journal, have that planting list and layouts, the original plan drawings, a list of species that were actually planted, and then you can have pictures of those intentional plants just to kind of guide you. And also, this plan could then be handed off to other people. Notes about maintenance with dates, physical or electronic versions. It's good to have physical copies, and as well as keep these on a computer somewhere. You want to use caution with common names. We're going to discuss that next. And then just have a good understanding that there's different growing cycles. A plant just coming up in the spring is going to look much different when it's fully mature. So as an example, everyone should be familiar with this common weed, creeping Charlie, Glaucoma hederaceae is its actual scientific name, but you can see that it has quite a few common names. And so some people might call this ground ivy, some people might call it creeping Jenny, gill over the ground. I haven't really heard it called these other names, but some people might call it that. And this is true, of course, too, of the native plants that we're trying to promote and preserve. So just be aware that lots of different common names. Another example of this, we just recently had a friend over. We're converting much of our lawn to native plants. We had some columbine that we planted last year. It's blooming wonderfully this year. And our friend called it honeysuckle. And so when I think of honeysuckle, I think of the invasive bush, the evil little cousin of buckthorn that we'll discuss later. So just so you're aware that some people call different plants different things. This little thing in my hand, this phone, this tool that we use is your best friend now for plant ID. There's several good resources and apps that you can use right on your phone or your computer. There's free apps such as PlantNet and Seek by iNaturalist. I use something called Picture This. It's been one of the better apps that I've found. It isn't always 100% correct, and do keep that in mind that none of these apps are perfect. Whatever it spits out at you, take that with a grain of salt. It might not be correct. I like picture this. It gets pretty good results, but it also helps me with my house plants, and I can take a picture of my dying house plant. It can give me ideas of what's wrong with it. There's a pay and a free version. I like to pay them, thinking that they'll make it better over time. So lots of different apps. Try to use them, test different ones out. Of course, there's the good old-fashioned books. Lots of great plant ID books out there in the world. Many you can find at steep discount, some with beautiful illustrations. There's also web resources and printed guides, and they're usually organized by bloom color or family, and they'll talk about characteristics like leaves, flowers, stems, and growth forms. Many times you can look up the results from the app and compare it to a guide and confirm. You can use multiple resources to make sure what you're looking at is the plant that you want it to be. Of course, you can just do an internet search. So some examples on the screen here. We did a search for swamp milkweed. One of my favorite native plants, smells like candy. Can't wait for it to bloom this year. You can see on the left a whole bunch of pictures of beautiful blooming swamp milkweed. But then we can get more specific and say we want to see swamp milkweed seedlings, and it'll show you hopefully a bunch of small seedlings when they're just starting out. So you could do that with any weed and see what kind of results that you get. This was a big part of our talk here tonight, is the different growth cycles, and I'm sure familiar to many of you. We have annuals, we have biennials, and we have perennials. Annual plants complete their life cycle within a single year, dying and not returning the following year. These plants only return the next year because of the seeds they release. Biennials are very similar, but they can take 1 or 2 or 3 or more years to complete their growth cycle. So they are going to wait for the perfect conditions. They'll bolt and flower, set seed, and then that parent plant is dead. But if they've produced seeds, they've created a whole bunch of other biennials, and so on and so forth. Perennial plants, of course, exist from year to year. They go dormant in the cold months. The above ground portion of the plant will die back and store energy in the roots to grow the following year. These perennial plants can spread by roots, rhizomes, and by seed. And why does this matter? It's going to help you identify and control unwanted plants. We'll dig deeper into this. You want to focus on the perennial weeds because they can spread in multiple ways. They're very persistent, and they're generally going to be the most troublesome weeds you find in a planting. So some examples of some annual weeds. We have winter annuals such as yellow rocket and shepherd's purse. Yellow rocket is very common on the landscape right now. If you're driving around and you see these splashes of yellow around, there's a pretty good chance it's this yellow rocket. It is in the mustard family. We'll talk more detail about that next. Shepherd's purse is another one. So yellow rocket starts out as this basal rosette with these kind of lobed leaves. It's then shooting up new shoots and bolting, putting up a stem to create the flowers, and then it gets those showy yellow flowers, and it blooms April till June. Yellow rocket is a good example of a mustard. If you see the picture on the right, all of those multiple seed pods along the plant stem, those are full of seeds. And so when you see that, like with garlic mustard, other things in the mustard family, Dame's rocket, all of those seeds, once they're ripe, they split, they explode, and they go all in all kinds of directions. So you want to get before they set seed. Shepherd's purse, very similar, a basil rosette. It has these toothed leaves, these small, really inconspicuous white flowers, and those cute little heart-shaped seed pods, but not a really terrible weed, but you don't want it taking over in a garden or a native planting setting. Another annual weed, and moving on to more of the weeds we see in the summer, we have common ragweed, lamb's quarters, and smartweed. These emerge in the spring and mature before the winter, trying to set those seeds to create future plants. Common ragweed is a native plant. It's a weedy native annual. It gets up to 3 feet tall. It has these highly dissected leaves. When they're first shooting out of the ground, they do look like quite a few other plants. It gets these green flowers that are pretty inconspicuous, but this is what hay fever is caused from. If you take one of these pollen grains and put it under a microscope or do a Google image search for common ragweed pollen, you can see those nasty pollen grains and how they affect people with allergies. Whereas it is not goldenrod, which many people think hay fever is from. One note, common ragweed seeds are eaten by many birds, but they'll find it plenty of other places. You don't need to leave it at your site or your garden. Lamb's quarters, my crew was out pulling this on a site today and also weed whipping it down. It's starting to pop up. This gets up to 3 feet high. It has triangular leaves with irregular teeth and gray coating. It has inconspicuous greenish gray flowers. There's the smartweed species. There's quite a few smartweed species. Several of them can be weedy in urban settings, in wet areas, and in certain situations. They can get really dense, up to 3 feet high. There's conspicuous joints on the stems. You can kind of see that in the second picture there. And they have pink or white spike flowers. They're little ball flowers. They almost look like they're plastic. There is some native species, but in general, this is something that you don't want to take over a garden. So just some tips on some annual weed control. Some recommendations. I think it's blocked. I don't know why it's blocked out here, but the first thing is it says to hand pull to remove annual weeds. They're pretty easy to remove. For the current year, if you have a dense infestation, you can mow them or string trim them. But the goal is to keep them from flowering, to keep them from setting seed. Some annuals and other biennials and perennials, especially, if you just pull that plant out of the ground and leave it lay on the ground, if the ground is moist enough, it can still flower, still set seed. So it's best to remove that from the site. For future years, you just want to focus on preventing seed production and reducing open soil spaces so other weeds can't invade. You want to do supplemental planting or seeding of the things that you want. In general, we don't want to use herbicides to control annual weeds. It's quite a bit of overkill. We generally manage these by hand pulling or cutting or mowing. So just some quick tips for hand pulling weeds. Again, prevent that seed production. Weed when the plants are small, if possible. Weed when the ground is moist. So when you're pulling that plant up out of the ground, the root's not just breaking off. You want to minimize soil disturbance as much as possible. And you're pulling that plant out of the ground, it's going to leave a hole or divot. You want to cover that up and tamp the soil down so you're not inviting more weeds to grow in that place. With any infestation, annuals, biennials, perennials, you want to start where there's the fewest plants and work your way into the densest part of the infestation because you don't want those weeds spreading to new areas where it's not. So get the most bang for your buck and work from the edges in. And again, be careful with that seed head disposal. Your home compost probably isn't going to get hot enough to kill those weed seeds. Think about other disposal methods. Moving on to biennial weeds. These again have 2-year life cycle at a minimum. Again, sometimes it's 3 years, sometimes it's more. But in year 1, they're germinating, developing roots and rosettes. A rosette is just the burdock there and the mullein, just low growing leaves on the ground. Year 2, these mature and reproduce. They flower, set seed, then that plant is dead. But if they produce seeds, they're going to have tons of little babies coming up in the near future. Everyone's familiar with this plant, burdock. It has basal leaves similar to rhubarb. The one time my college friends had me over to their house and said, Paul, why does this rhubarb taste bad? And I said, well, it's because it's burdock. The burdock root itself is edible, and that's one good way to get rid of it is you want to dig down and get that tap root. Oftentimes, if we have a lot of burdock, we're going to spike it, which is taking a sharp spade or shovel and holding it next to where that tap root is and slicing through the root. And oftentimes that kills the plant. If you see the last year's burrs on your site, it's a good idea just to remove all of those before they can set seed and have hundreds of more burdock. I believe this is where we got Velcro from, is from somebody studied the burdock hooked seed pods. Next, we have mullein. A lot of people think this is a native plant. It's not. It's not the worst plant in the world as far as invasiveness goes, but it can really take over disturbed sites. It too gets that basal rosette, extremely fuzzy leaves, a tall stalk with a spike of yellow flowers. We call it king's candle. I believe they used to dip it in wax and use it for torches. I call it Yoda's ear or nature's toilet paper. So if you really are in a bind. Next up is our biennial weed control. So for small plantings, you want to focus on hand pulling. Mature plants may require digging tools. Second-year bolting plants will probably require tools to remove. Use that spade to dig them, spike them, dig them out. If you have a large infestation of something like burdock, you may want to consider a broadleaf herbicide to manage them. Next up is perennial weeds, and this should really be the focus of your efforts going out to a site and managing weeds. They live more than 2 years. They produce via seed, vegetatively by roots or runners or fragments or all of the above. Some examples of these are quackgrass, Canada thistle, reed canary grass, crown vetch, and bird's foot trefoil. Quackgrass will be rearing its ugly head here very soon. It's a perennial cool season grass connected by creeping roots. It's overlapping points where the leaf is attached to the stem. It may form a dense mat of roots in the top 6 inches of soil, and one plant can spread 5 feet in a growing season. So again, you want to keep it from seeding. You want to dig it out, you want to spray it, you want to somehow manage it and keep it from spreading. Canada thistle has, everybody's familiar with this plant. It has deeply lobed leaves with prickly edges, forms colonies of connected plants. It has small pink flowers that bloom from June till August. They've done studies and it does produce a lot of seeds, but in general, those seeds don't fall far from the plant and not a lot of them germinate. This one really is spreading mostly by underground rhizome, those roots spreading underground. So this is a good one to stay on top of. Crown vetch, this is one of the worst plants that we deal with on our restoration sites. It has leaves of many divided leaflets. It's a sprawling, low ground cover. So if you just let it go, it'll form a mat and crawl over everything, outcompeting all of the good plants that you want, uh, not letting any sunlight in. It's kind of a big bully. It does get these beautiful dense clusters of pink flowers. This one was introduced as a forage crop and as erosion control along roadsides, but it is one that you want to stay on top of. We have quite a few common weedy invasive trees and also some native trees. Everybody's familiar with buckthorn. Common buckthorn grows just about anywhere. Glossy buckthorn is the picture on the top of the slide. That one grows in wetter areas, but very problematic, produces, birds eat the seeds and immediately disperse them around. So buckthorn can be a really bad problem, as all of you I'm sure know. Honeysuckle mentioned earlier, there's several different, there's Tartarian honeysuckle, there's Bell's honeysuckle. I call it the octopus because it just forms a big, huge plant that covers a large area, so it can really take up a lot of space. We also have Siberian elm and Chinese elm. White mulberry, which a lot of people think are native, is really a weedy tree that is not native to Minnesota or to the United States. We have several volunteer native trees that can be weedy. If you have a rain garden or a smaller planting, you probably don't want a box elder growing in it. So you're going to want to get these small seedling trees before they can get big. Box elder, green ash, and American elm. If you see all the little winged samara that elm create, they're all over the ground right now because the elms have just seeded out. For perennial weed control, it's going to require multiple years to control them. You want to prevent that seed production. You want to prevent them from seeding, pulling or cutting the flowers or seed heads to slow the spread, smothering like the picture with the cardboard in the lower left-hand corner. If you keep that on there, and even better, putting mulch on top of that and letting it sit for a whole growing season, those plants can't photosynthesize. It can do a good job of managing those plants, but even then, some follow-up's probably going to be needed. If you have the ability, of course, mowing, grazing, or burning can reduce the vigor of these perennial plants. And you want to consider herbicide when you can. You can do a wipe-on method. So in the photo here, they're wearing a cloth glove, but they're wearing heavy-duty latex or nitrile gloves underneath. And then they're just spraying it on the plant and wicking it on the plant. That way you're targeting just the weed that you're trying to treat, and you're not going to harm the good plants that you want to save. A little bit more about herbicides. You want to identify the exact pest species before you break out the herbicide. You want to use the correct chemical and application methods. You want to apply herbicide according to the label. The label is the law. So when you're purchasing herbicide, that's the law that you're reading. So you want to make sure that you're applying it correctly at the right amounts, at the right times, to the right plant. You want to protect yourself. Use at least the personal protective equipment called for by the label. And you want to time your application for when plants are most susceptible and off-target impacts are unlikely. So you're not spraying on weedy days, you're not spraying on rainy days, and you're not spraying on windy days. And that's for the benefit of the good plants, but also to protect yourself as well. We do have a few aggressive native plants that can take over a planting. These are beneficial plants that over time they outcompete the natives. It's okay to control these or remove them if that's desired in that setting. Some examples of these are common milkweed, Canada and tall goldenrod, and daisy fleabane. The daisy fleabane are very common right after a site is created, getting established. If it's a ton of daisy fleabane, it is a good beneficial native plant. I see a lot of pollinators on it. But I will remove, 50% or more depending and leaving some. It will kind of disappear over time as the native perennials get established. Whereas the common milkweed and the goldenrod come in later stages of a planting. So it's good to, if you see them becoming an issue early on, to address them right away before it's so dense that you can't take it on. That's about all we had for you tonight. I just wanted to give you some closing tips. Um, Use notable dates and holidays as touch points. Ashley sent me this full list just yesterday. I thought it was kind of neat because I was familiar with, think about weeding around Memorial Day, weeding around 4th of July, and Labor Day. Then you're kind of getting the cool season weeds and the warm season weeds and anything that you miss. That's kind of the bare minimum that you want to shoot for. But then also expanding that, doing your spring cleanup around tax time to take out some frustration. Uh, Halloween, doing your fall cleanup. And then Valentine's Day, doing your pruning of, of trees and shrubs. That's the best time to do pruning of trees and shrubs when they're dormant, and then we're not spreading pests or diseases at that time of year. There's an asterisk by tax day for spring cleanup to benefit yourself. There might be a foot of snow on the ground, so you don't want to do your spring cleanup then, but also to benefit pollinators. In general, you want to wait till nighttime temperatures are 50 degrees or above regularly for a period of time before removing a bunch of plant debris where there's beneficial pollinators, insects, and other critters trying to help in these garden settings. So keep that in mind. Don't get out there too early. If you have to, leave some debris, some leaf litter, some plant stems where you can for that habitat, that refugia for pollinators and other insects. Be aware that there's many native plant lookalikes. So, for example, um, we have Canada milk vetch that looks very similar to crown vetch this time of year. And so later on, it'll be much taller. It gets a white flower versus the purple flower. But early on in the season, some of these native plants can really look like the invasive plants we're trying to get rid of. So use those apps and those books to help you. The other thing, don't burn yourself out. Get out there and enjoy it. See the great work that you do and put a little work into it. And this time of year, I'm reminding the crew that cool season weeds are really having their day and things look a little rough this time of year. But then by June, July, the warm season, native plants are thriving and things will look much better. Another thing, remember to enjoy the good stuff. Go to a good managed park or landscape, look at all the native plants there, and remember to enjoy the good stuff. That was all that I had. I'm going to try to bring up so I can see you all again.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. No questions in the chat. I will go ahead and take questions from anyone online if they have them. Feel free to raise your hand or just come off mute and shout her out.
I'm sorry, I heard you say something about cutting through the root of course, as soon as you put me on the spot, the old person brain will kick in. Um,
Burdock.
Thank you. So where is that? Is that like if you cut halfway down through the root, can you do it like right at the surface? Because I have been working on this burdock in my local park for ages and it just continues to persist.
Hmm. Yeah, try it out. I just tried it in my backyard. You can kind of feel with a shovel, and you don't want to go right at the top of the rosettes, but you want to go down at an angle just a little bit and slice through there. And it was pretty amazing. I could see the leaves like wilting 20 minutes afterwards. Um, will it come back? Maybe, but you're at least opening up space right now. It's really more so if you have like 30 or 40 burdock that you have to deal with, versus like two or three that you could just dig out.
Yeah, no, we're talking large. My whole park, I swear, is just an invasive park. It makes me very sad. So I've been
Mm,
working on the burdock. I've pulled all the well, almost all the garlic mustard, but there's still lots and lots of stuff that needs to be done with it. But
yeah,
okay, I will go forth with my shovel and execute the burdock. Thank you so much.
yes.
Paul, we have a question about creeping bellflower. Any tips?
Ooh, I
I think
thought about,
everyone's looking for that one.
I thought about putting that one in there. Um, it's a plant that I have quite a bit of experience with, and I've struggled with. I know that there's a whole bunch of new. There's the new Bell No. You can find it on Facebook. He has a herbicide concoction. I have not tried it myself. What I do know works is a lot of work. So you're digging it all out and getting those deep tubers. So the bellflower has kind of right at the soil surface, fine rhizomatous roots. But then if you dig down up to a foot, it has these tubers that are just waiting for you to pull it, and then those tubers will laugh at you, and then they'll send up new shoots. So you have to get down, get those tubers. What we did is then we had a sifter, and we would sift through and pull out all the root fragments and the tubers. Then we put the clean soil back in. We put down a weed barrier and let that sit for a year. I believe we put mulch over on top of that, and then removed the mulch, removed the weed barrier, and planted competitive native plants such as large-leafed aster, zigzag goldenrod, wild ginger. This was in kind of a shady area. Things that can shade it out. So there is competitive plantings that you can do to try to get a hold of it. Bare minimum, keeping it from flowering, keeping it from seeding. I was controlling, thank you, Simba, for that question, at the Bush Lake chapter of the Isaac Walton League in Bloomington. Yeah, there, which was probably planted there by some uh, good-hearted soul at one point. So, and I believe I found it behind our garage here too. So I don't know. Any other questions? Yeah, check out that Bell No. His name is Cole Yates. He's kind of led the efforts to get the creeping bellflower listed as a noxious weed, which it's hard to believe that it hasn't been listed as a noxious weed yet.
Yes, I have a question about aquatic invasives in near plantings or next to plantings along a lake shore.
Sure.
I'm thinking about cattail.
Yes. Cattail is a tricky one. We have both native and non-native cattail, and then those two hybridized and made a hybrid cattail, which is most likely what you see here in the metro. It's very prolific, takes up a lot of space. Because of where it grows, You often need a permit from the Minnesota DNR to take over large-scale management of that plant because that is regulated. That shoreland area next to the water and in the water is highly regulated by the DNR. That being said, cattail can be dug out, removed all the roots. If you have scattered patches, the best, if you see a new patch of cattail, it's good to get after it right away before it can spread and become a huge monoculture. It can be, you can use herbicide and it'd be very similar to that wicking method that we showed in the picture. There's herbicides that are effective against it. Other people have, why it's so successful is the thatch that it creates. So cattail grows, dies back, cattail grows, dies back. So it's creating this dense thatch on the ground that nothing can grow through, so it doesn't have any competition. So part of it is getting rid of that thatch material, getting rid of the growing parts of the plant. Yeah, it's a growing issue. The University of Minnesota now has the Cattail Collaborative, and you could do check out their website and see what their recommendations are. It can be controlled by managing water levels, which I know to most people that's not possible. But if it's growing in the water and you cut it below the water surface, it's not able to get oxygen that it needs to grow. So that's one effective method of managing it, is cutting it below, as low below the water surface as you can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Cool. Well, I mean, we'll take another quick little workshop. And the intent here with this workshop too is all of you are on here for to be volunteers for the WaterWise Garden Mentors. If you're struggling to find an ID for a plant, or if you are having issues maybe deciding what a good management strategy is, if you're on a site visit, just a reminder, it is okay to say that you don't know, but you can find out and then reach out to staff, myself, your project leads, and then with those questions, and we'll be able to get some resources and then send those out to the people that had the difficult site. Because as much as it seems like it's straightforward, I feel like there's always something weird you'll find out in the field. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. With that, I will thank everyone for their time, and hopefully you all get to go enjoy the almost unbearable weather.
Good luck, all. Happy weeding.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Have a good night. Thank you.